Hi you guys, welcome to the tip calculator program here that we're going to be coding in Python today. So first off, I wanted to start off and explain what CS and math is for us before we jump in today if you're not familiar. So we are taking math standards and partnering these standards with code to make math more applicable, and we realize that code is in the future in terms of college and career readiness. So we're taking math standards and we're really bringing these to life as we use code. So we're going to be working today with calculating percentages as we talk about calculating tip. So let's come to a program that we've already created in Scratch, and let's see how this program's running. So what is your bill? Let's say $100. And what percentage would you like to tip? We'll say 20%. So notice that this program is calculating our total payment will be $120, our total bill. So we're going to go ahead and try and program this in Python today. So let's go ahead. The first thing that we're going to need as we start our program, and notice we are in Trinket here, which is a free platform that allows us to code here with Python. So the first thing let's go ahead and do is we're going to receive some input on the total bill and tip percentage. Notice in green here when I've got this hashtag or this pound sign, this is just simply a comment. So this is making clear whatever's underneath this comment is made clear here by this comment so people know what our code is going to be doing. So this is really helpful for somebody coming in and looking at your code so they can understand what each piece is doing. It's also helpful for yourself as you open back up a program. So underneath this comment here, we need to receive some input on what our total bill is and what our percentage is. So let's start with our bill. We're going to call a variable here. We'll call it bill equals. And we're going to receive some input from our user. We're going to ask, what was your total bill? And let's see how this works as we run this play button here. We'll run it. So what was your total bill? Let's say $100. Perfect, everything's looking good. So notice on the right hand side is where this question pops up and the user can then type in a response. The other variable we need here is our percentage of tip that we're going to be giving. So, same idea, we're going to take some input and we're going to ask what percentage would you like to tip? Let's run this again and see on this right hand side. Total bill, let's say, was 100. Percentage would you like to tip, let's say, is 20%. So what we've done in this first part of our program is we have taken some input from the user. The next part of our program, let's go ahead and calculate our total bill. So again, I'm putting a comment in here to describe underneath this comment, here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing some code, creating some code that's going to calculate our total bill based upon the input from above. So the first thing let's go ahead and do, whenever we are calculating tip, we're going to want to be working with a decimal value. And right now we have a percentage value. So let's go ahead and make another variable. Let's call it our decimal tip. So we're going to take our percentage tip that we've received from our user, and we're going to divide this by 100 to get our decimal value. Let's run this and see what happens. What is our total bill? We'll say 100. What percentage would you like to tip? We'll say 20. Now notice this line highlighted in red, which means we've got some sort of error in our code. And we can always read below here in Trinket and Python as we look for a description of what our error is. So it's telling us here on line 7 it's having trouble we're using a string and an integer here, which is not working for us. So we need to go back up into our input, and we need to understand an important concept here in Python. When we are asking for an input from our user, it's taking in something called a string, which is really just words that it's taking in. So it's looking at this like a sentence input here. But we know that as we're asking for values here, we want it to recognize these values as numbers. That's what we're expecting to get. So one thing we could do is we could wrap this input in int, which stands for integer. So we want to tell our program here, since we're going to be manipulating these numbers in our calculation of our bill, we need to be telling our program that we're expecting a number value for our input. So let's notice how this will now not give us an error. So the values I just typed in, 120, are going to work just fine in this format because I've got an integer. But notice here, what if my bill, we know our bill is not always a whole number. What if I had a bill of $100.23? Notice, now I've got an error on line 2 here. So an integer is only going to recognize a whole number. So if we are expecting any decimals, we are going to want to recognize this as a float value. And in this program that we're making, a tip calculator, we definitely could have some decimals. So let's make our values here of our input float values, since we could expect a decimal. And now if we ran this, we'll see, gotta make sure I click back over. We'll see we have no errors. So things are looking good. All right, let's come back down to our calculation now that we got our float values as our input. So we've got our decimal tip. Now if we want to figure out just what the cost of our tip is going to be, we need to take our total bill and multiply it by our decimal value of our tip. So that when we want to figure out our total bill, we can take the cost of our tip and add this to our total bill to give us what we are going to be paying in total with our percentage of tip. Let's run this, make sure we don't have any errors. Looking good. All right, one other piece to our code then. We're going to want to share at the end the total bill with our user. So let's comment this out again so that we can see here what's going on. So in lines 1 through 3, we've taken some input from our user, recognizing that this is going to be a number that we're taking in, could be a decimal. Lines 6 through 9, we are calculating, based upon the input we got, what our total bill is going to be. And then finally, at the end here, we want to share with our user what this value is going to be. What are they going to be expected to pay? So we are going to use this print command, which whatever we put after this print command is going to be printed over on this right-hand side, along with where we answered our input questions. So we are going to need to be combining a few different pieces here as we use this print command. So we're going to be merging or combining strings, and we're going to refer to this as concatenation as we use code in Python here. So let's go ahead and share. Your total bill, including tip, is, now here's my plus as I concatenate, I combine a few different pieces. We're going to use our total bill, whatever that value comes out as, and we need this variable because that will change depending on our input, is some sort of number, and then we'll list this as dollars to close this out. So this will print on the right hand side, your total bill including tip is, whatever this value is, dollars. Let's run this. Now notice we have an error again, and this is good. It's going to tell us what we need. So it's noticing that we are trying to add a number, this float value, this total bill, with words, a string. And that doesn't make sense really mathematically or inside code here. So Python cannot add a number and a word together. We need to convert this float value, this number, to a string so that we can concatenate these strings. We've got 3 pieces we want to add together here. So we need to take our number and change this into a string value so that we can combine it with these other strings. Let's try running this now. 120. Your total bill including tip is $120. Now notice this bothers me here that we don't have spaces. So we can come back in here into our string and put a space right here and a space before our dollars to make this print a little bit nicer. So 120. So our total bill including tip is $120. Looks awesome, you guys. Really, really great work.